Hello. In this video, we are going to go through, I'm going to go through learning Scala. Scala is a object-oriented and functional programming language that I don't know yet. So in this next series of videos, maybe 10 videos, I'm not 100% sure, we're going to go through learning the basics of Scala. Not going to cover installing it because you can just go to the internet, go to scala-lang.org/download, and it will tell you everything you need to do to actually download and install Scala on your system. And also it takes ages anyway, and I can't be bothered to edit the bit out. So what we're going to cover in this video is doing a hello world, basics about variables, and then we'll do some basic stuff about loops, so for loops, while loops, and we'll also cover the yield keyword, which is very weird in Scala. So let's start off by doing the hello world. Okay, so if you were using a language like Python, you could simply just say something like print hello world, and that would work and it'd be all good. With Scala, you need to create a main point, so something that when you run the application it says, oh, I'm looking for the main point of the application. That's where we start the application. It's like Java. In Java you do something like a public static void, oh my god, he can't type, main string, whoops, you do a main function, right? Main string args, and that's your main function. So when you run the program, the full application, the first thing it looks for, or the thing it actually starts running from, is this main point here. And we can do the same thing in Scala, except for we do it slightly differently. So we're going to do something like, what do we do actually? We do object main extends app, and that gives us our main point. Okay, so that's all very good. Save that up, and then we can just type in print ln, so that prints line, and we can type in hello world, and that should print. We don't need semicolons here either, even though I haven't mentioned semicolons. But if you were using Java, so Scala and Java are quite similar in certain ways. One of the things that Scala doesn't have is you don't need to use semicolons, which is fantastic. So if we were to run this now, it's going to take a little bit of time because it will compile it as we run it, and it says hello world. By the way, I didn't show you how to run things as well. If we're just running things from the command line, we can just type in Scala and then whatever you want to run, like that, and there we go, it runs, and that will compile it as well and run it for you. I've just got that bound in Vim, so I can press one button and it will run whatever I'm running. So that's your hello world sorted. Okay, so now let's have a quick look at variables. So instead of using an actual Scala file, we're just going to use the Scala REPL for this. So type in Scala at your command line if you've installed Scala, and we can start typing in some Scala stuff. So there are two main keywords in Scala. One of them is var and the other one is val. The difference between them is that var allows you to reassign the variable after you first assigned it, and val doesn't. So if we were to just show you what that means, if I were to type in var x equals 1, let's us do that, and then I can say x equals 2, and it says mutated x, and then we can print x, and x is now 2. If we were to do the same thing, but we were to do val y is equal to, so let's say 5, okay, it's going to do that for us, it's going to print 5, and if I now try and do y is equal to 6, it's going to kick off. It's going to be like, no, you can't do that, it's type reassignment. See, look at that, error, reassignment to val. We can't do that because we've said with the val keyword, this variable is not going to be reassigned at all. Whereas with the var keyword, we can do that. So two main keywords, var and val. Var, you can reassign, val, you can't. So there's something else that you may have noticed here that just happened. When I print any of these, so if I print y, it tells me that it's an integer. Now, at no point did I tell it it was an integer. The reason for this is that Scala has quite a good type inference system, meaning that when you have a type, when you well, actually not when you have a type, when you create a type, so, we'll do this, we can't do x, we'll do u, it should come back as a double because it's inferred from the actual variable we've given it what the type is. So we don't actually have to specify types all the time, so that's quite useful if you're used to a language, say like Java, which pretty much makes you use types all the time, except for in the case of using the var keyword, which was introduced in Java 10 that no one really uses anyway, from what I've seen. So yes, we have great type inference. It's quite like Swift in that regard, if you've ever used the Swift programming language. So there's some basic stuff about variables, and we can also do something like it will also figure out strings, so you can do hello, and it will work out strings. Just more examples of it doing type inference quite well. Okay, so now let's have a look at loops in Scala. We can look at the while loop, and we can also look at the for loop. So the while loop is quite familiar if you've ever seen one before. So we'll first create a variable, we'll call it x, make it 0, and what we can do is we can say while x is less than 10, then we want to do something. Okay, so we can do something like print ln hello chaps. There we go. And we can also then change the value of x. So we can say x is equal to x plus 1. Like that. And if we print that, it's going to run through that loop and print hello chaps. There we go. So it prints through hello chaps. This is quite simple if you've ever seen a while loop before. It's doing the same sort of thing. We are evaluating a condition, doing that thing while this condition is true, and then as soon as that condition ceases being true, we'll carry on forever. So we could also do like an infinite loop. We could do while true. Now I don't know if we can type true like that, or if it will just let us, if I have to put a capital T or something like that, because sometimes that happens. So if I say something like print hello, okay, I don't know where those two zeros came from then. We'll try this, see what happens. Oh my god! Wow, that is a lot of hellos. Wow. Okay, so now we can do, that's how you do an infinite loop. You just state it's true, and then it will carry on forever. Okay, so now let's have a look at the for loops, and let's go ahead and do that. So for loops, similar to for loops you've seen in other languages, most likely if you've seen other languages. We're going to have for and then the condition, so we can do something like x, and then we have this weird thing. So like if you were using Python, you could say x in, and then you could give it a range of like 0 to 10, right? But we have this weird like backwards arrow, which looks like a backwards lambda. If you've ever seen a lambda before, lambdas are like this or like this. So sort of backwards lambda thing. And then we can give it a range, or we could give it something iterable, like a list. So we could do, let's do a range, so we can do 0, and then we can use the to keyword, and we can say 10, and if we do this, we can say print line, and we could just say something like OMG. Wow. Okay, and close that off, let it run. Wow, look at that, it runs. So that's pretty cool. We can also do the same thing if we were to use a list. So let's do a list instead. So we'll say something like val, and I haven't shown you how to declare a list yet, but we can do list, and then we can do something like I don't know, 5, 6, 3, 6, 7, 8, like that, and that should be okay. Illegal start. You know what I haven't done? I haven't given it a name. This list, we'll call it this list. Okay, cool. So now we've got a list, and we've got we can also see type inference happening again, where we've got list, and it tells us that these are all integers. Ooh, that's quite interesting. So we can do for x backwards lambda thing, and then we can do this list. Okay, and now what we're going to expect, if I do a print line and print x, what are we expecting? Well, we're expecting to just go through this entire list in order. So run that through, and look at that, we go through the entire list in order. So that's pretty cool. Now there's another thing we can also do as well. So with Scala, these parentheses, these squiggly brackets, aren't always necessary. So for example, we could do exactly the same thing we just did, but instead of using parentheses, we could literally just type in print line, and then do that, and it does the same thing. So we don't need the parentheses, and this also works for functions as well, but we're not going to cover functions in this video. So we've got that thing working there. There's also something else I wanted to cover, and it's a bit of a weird thing, and I didn't know whether to cover it in this video, but because it's a sort of a new thing that I don't think many people will have come across if they haven't used Scala before. I certainly hadn't come across it. It's the yield keyword. Now, I'd come across this in Python, and I think Ruby has it as well, although I'm not very good with Ruby. It's the yield keyword. Now, what the yield keyword does is essentially it's very similar to the map function, if you've ever used that in JavaScript or used it in Java. So what we can do is we can basically do a for loop like we were just done, right? So if we do the same for loop, well, we're going to go over our list, and instead of just printing out some stuff, we can type in yield, and then let's say we want to do something with the values, so we can do x times 2, for example. And what this will do is it will take our list, and for every value in it, it will times it by 2, and then it will return a new list with all of the things in it, all of the items in it that have been multiplied by 2. Okay, so if we run that now, it should do something like return something that looks like this, except for it's going to have 10, 12, 6. Oh, look at that quick maths. Oh my god. Okay, run it. Okay, there we go. So 10, 12, 6. Okay, and you can also... Yep, so that is exactly what I said would happen from this one. You could also use the yield to do other things, so you could transform the values in other ways, and it's very similar to a map command in that it will transform values. What it does is it sort of adds all the things from the loop into a buffer and then does the transformation on it and then returns that new collection of whatever you want. So in this case it's a list that's returned. And so that, I think, is everything I wanted to cover in this video. So we've covered printing hello world, running Scala applications for the first time, variables, we've covered loops, and we've covered the yield keyword. And so next time we'll probably cover functions and some other stuff. So yes, thank you very much for watching. If you have any comments, questions or anything like that, leave them down below. I will try and answer them, although YouTube for some reason isn't telling me that I get comments, so that's a bit annoying. So sorry if I don't see them immediately, I apologise. Anyway, yes, thank you very much for watching. See you in the next one. Ta-ta!